What's up, guys? It's the dog days of summer, super hot, but it's a really fun time of the year to fish if you use the right things. So today we're going to break down 5 baits that I think you guys would have a really good time catching a lot of fish, maybe the biggest fish of the year. Certainly some of my biggest fish have come August, September, early October. So we're going to break down 5 of our favorite late summer baits and techniques and show you guys a couple of tricks that we do to hopefully give you more success. So if you'd like to have a really fun conversation, let's do it. Welcome to the Hookup Tackle.
Oh, what a stud.
Yeah. Look at that.
That was sick.
Cheers, my friends. Happy Sunday. All right, guys, some breaking news. What's new this week at the Hookup Tackle?
What a beautiful coastline fish.
Look at that.
Look at that gut on that. That's a nice fish.
Welcome back. I am Ben with the Hookup Tackle, the Tackle Otaku on Instagram, being joined by my buddy Jeffrey the King. What's up, Jeffrey the King?
What's up, buddy?
Sorry that my voice is a little crazy. I'm still on like concert recovery mode.
I see.
So I think I'm going to be this way for a couple of months, just looking at my schedule.
Ooh.
So get used to this raspy
I like
sexiness
this.
that I got going on. Summertime fishing. Don't you like you're shaking your head? Are you over it? Are you ready for
I never
fall?
even began.
Yeah, I know. So, you know, a lot of you may be like Jeff. So Jeff literally has a fishing season, self-imposed, by the way. Some of you guys live in places where you can only fish so many months of the year. Jeff only allows himself to fish so many months of the year. Basically, you fish fall through early spring.
October to like March, April.
Right. And then you take the
Yeah, and then it's vacation.
basically
after that.
spawn through early fall, you
Yeah.
take it off.
Yeah,
Right.
I see.
So, you know, summer is a really difficult time of the year to fish because of the heat, and a lot of times the fish just get into really weird patterns. But as we get closer to the end of summer, a lot of things start to happen that kind of start turning things around. Now, keep in mind that this time of the year when the water temps are at their highest and the thermocline is doing all kinds of weird things, typically your peak windows of opportunity are smaller. Now, not all the time. Okay, there are things that can dictate that. You might have a cloudy day. You might be fishing in a system that has a lot of current, and maybe if they pull current, the fish feed all day. So there are things that can help it, right? Especially as we get evening storms. We'll talk about some of these weather changes and some of these bait choices as we go through it. But generally speaking, this is a time of the year that you want to start paying attention to moon phase. You want to pay attention to the peak times of when things are happening, and that peak time might be in the most uncomfortable time of the day. It might be at 1 in the afternoon, or it might be at 4 in the morning, right? So you guys might have to, you know, forego breakfast and be on the lake right at sunrise, or you might have to enjoy that nice fattening breakfast, grab a beer, and then hit the lake in the afternoon. So really pay attention to the timing, and once you kind of dial it in, you got to ride that out. Okay, now we're going to talk about 5 baits that I really enjoy throwing this time of the year. This isn't necessarily the 5 best picks for August kind of video, because a lot of the baits that I would generally pick are kind of the same thing that we do in July, kind of the same thing that we do in June. Things like a frog, a deep crankbait, a big jig, a big worm. Like, these are just, you know, traditional summertime things. The baits I'm going to talk about are baits that I start adding into my arsenal this time of the year and really carry on through early fall. And these are baits that get some of the biggest bites of the year and are really fun to fish. Okay, so let's jump in now. What typically happens in a lot of waterways in the summers is that water gets super, super hot. The fish are almost kind of forced to do this. They're almost forced to kind of seek that thermocline deep, or a lot of times the thermocline kind of blends in and the fish will go super, super shallow, especially if you guys live in places that get some storms, that get some fronts, or if you live in places where they drop the water level. So, you know, out here in the desert, we have a lot of reservoirs that drop during the summer, right? They fill in the winter and then they flush downstream in the summer. And the faster they drop, the more it kind of pushes groups of fish super, super shallow and super, super deep. And those shallow fish are looking to pick off little crawdads that are dislodged in the rocks, any shad that might be starting to migrate back. And if you get an evening storm or a rain and that water temp cools even a degree or two, you'd be amazed how much life will filter into the shallows. So I'm really looking to pick the shallowest water in my areas apart. And if it's just not working, then I'll back out into deeper water. Does that make sense? Cool, let's start shallow. So one of my favorite baits for this time of the year is a buzz bait. Okay, so I'm gonna show you guys a couple of tricks that we do with the buzz bait, especially this time of the year, that really help out. But a buzz bait is a bait that I will substitute for my walking bait if those fish really have moved shallow. Now, if they're still kind of suspended, they're out off deeper points, that kind of stuff, then I'll stay on a walking bait, something like a kick knocker or a shower blows. But if they've really moved to the bank, or if I'm fishing a lake where that water level is consistently dropping, I'm looking for a bait that I can put right onto the shore and drag off. And I'm looking for those fish that are positioned. If a bank's like this and the water's like this, I want those fish that are sitting just staring at the bank, waiting for something to dislodge and crawl back in, or swim right by and ambush really quickly. And a buzz bait's an amazing way to cover water. Okay, so lots of good buzz baits on the market. I pretty much live majority of the time, I would say, on one of these. So Jamaica Boa from Megabass, Loud Buzz from Evergreen. One of those two is generally my starting point. I keep it really simple. I would say 9 times out of 10, I go with just a natural shad pattern, silver blade. Okay, sometimes I'll mix in a gold blade. Sometimes the blade color makes a big difference. On a cloudy day or muddy water, I might mix in a painted blade, like an all white. And then if I'm out there at 4 in the morning, right, or 2 in the morning, depending on what that time is, I always keep a black one on hand. So if it's super, super low light, I just like the profile that these baits give off. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of tips and tricks. Now, most of the time, I take a buzz bait out of the package and I tie it on and throw it. Okay, so, you know, there's lots of, I mean, if you Googled and YouTubed buzz baits, you'd probably get so confused as to all the different ways of doing things in the buzzbait world, right? Do whatever works for you is what I would say. Okay, so there's no right, no wrong to this. Well, I guess it's right if you're catching fish and it's wrong if you're not, right? So I would say 9 times out of 10, I take it out of the package, I tie it on, and I go. But I'm really just trying to get feedback from the fish, and then I'm making adjustments as they give me feedback. Okay, so I'm gonna show you a couple of little tweaks that we will do to these things. Now, most of the time I'm throwing a buzz bait, I'm kind of running bank pretty tight. I'm trying to make very accurate casts. So I'm chucking at a specific tree. I see a little rock just off the shore, so I throw just past the rock and bring it over the rock. I'm looking for ambush places where there might be a big rock and a bass sitting here. My buzz bait can come right over the top and he can ambush it. Something like that, right? So it's usually shorter, more accurate casts. Now, if I'm fishing a larger body of water, maybe it's grass or aquatic vegetation, or maybe it's really clear and I got to make a really long cast, then I will add a trailer to my buzzbait to give myself a little bit more weight. Okay, so for trailers, I typically do something like this. Okay, either like a Keitech, some kind of paddle tail, or Yamamoto Fat Ika is something that I've thrown for years and years and years on the back of a buzzbait. Nowadays you could use something like a cover scat, would be a great one. Yamamoto, just some kind of heavy plastic that I basically just put on the back of my buzzbait to give myself weight, right? Because buzzbaits really suck to cast because basically you've got this big sail here, not a lot of weight on the back, so they tend to throw and kind of just do all kinds of weird stuff. If you add weight to the back of it, then it's weighted in the back and it helps it go and you can just cast it forever. It also gives the fish something to suck down, right? So if this is coming through the water and those fish are just kind of sipping at it and not just absolutely just punishing it, then, you know, if they just sip at this, it's basically just this little strand of hook, strands of skirt. There's not a lot there for the fish to really get in their mouth. So by adding some form of trailer, you've given them now this bulky soft plastic that they can suck down and get, right? So there's just more there for them to get. So let me just rig one of these up really quick for you guys. Now, if you guys choose to go Jamaica Boa out of the package, they'll come with these 4 longer strands, right? Kind of like trailer strands. I usually like to fish it like this without a soft plastic trailer if I can, just because it's easier. It's one less thing to manage. I don't have to worry about, you know, the bait tearing or ripping or anything like that. But if I see that they're sucking at it a little bit and they're not totally committing to it, then I'll just quickly add a soft plastic trailer, push that up on there, and now I have a paddle tail. So typically I will take these longer strands and I just pull them off. Okay, so my 4 strands are gone, and now I use the bait as a trailer. This is also a great thing to add to your Jamaica Boa if you're actually throwing the buzzbait onto the bank and dragging it back in. Okay, because there's lead that goes down the shaft here, so it kind of creates a little bit of a cushion so that lead doesn't break off and lose your skirt. Now, a lot of guys like to throw their buzzbait with no skirt and just the straight shad tail. That's fine too. So you guys can play with that. You can experiment. You can do a horny toad. You can do different things, but just know that everything you put on the back of this is going to change the speed of your buzzbait. Okay, so by adding a paddle tail, it's going to give it extra weight, but it's going to cause it to slow down a little bit. Okay, so you can fish it a little bit slower even though it's heavier, because that thing is kicking back there. It's just creating a little bit different resistance back there. So if you want to go faster, you could add something like a split tail or no trailer, right? So play with your trailers. That'll help you guys a lot as well. Now, one more little tip and trick, and by the way, one of the reasons why I try to keep the color of my buzzbait simple is if I stay with like a natural shad type pattern, I can use my trailers to add different colors, right? So if I need a little bit of chartreuse, I can add a chartreuse trailer, and now I've got a little chartreuse trailer. If I need a little bit of blue, I can add a little bit of blue, so on and so forth. But again, it's going to be specific to your bodies of water, so use whatever, you know, is working for you guys. That's the biggest thing that I can say on the trailers. Now, here's a little tip. If you guys are casting this and they're hitting it and they're missing it, or your hookup ratio is bad, or you know it's coming through and they just keep hitting it and pushing it or missing it, one thing that I have noticed in buzzbaits, especially a straight shank buzzbait like what we have here, is this hook is really just underneath the water, right? So here's the water. That blade is plopping through that water, right? There's not a lot of gap here. So if they are just sucking, a lot of times, you know, it's coming through and they suck and it just kind of goes like that, or they might push and they don't really get the actual hook part. So one thing that we will do a lot when they short strike is we will lower this head down underneath the surface of the water, and our hookup ratio goes sky high. Okay, and we do that simply by just having a pair of pliers, and I'll demonstrate what we do here real quick. So you're going to start right there at the head. Okay, you're just going to use your pliers, and you're going to just kind of bend it up a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to come about an inch or so on the shaft of the wire, and we're just going to bend it down. Okay, so just like that, now we've lowered our hook down into the water column about an inch. Okay, we've shortened it up a little bit as well, so it's a little bit closer to the blade now. So everything is a little bit tighter package. So instead of it being stretched out, it's a little bit tighter. If you want it even tighter, you can take this inch and maybe go 1.5 inches or all the way to that groove. Just depends on which buzzbait you're throwing. But just that little tweak right there can really increase your land ratio when they're non-committal and they're short striking. Okay, so I hope that helps. This is one of the funnest ways to catch them too. I mean, there's nothing better than a buzzbait bite. In fact, most mornings this time of the year I kind of start with the buzzbait, and if I get bit one time, my day's kind of screwed, because then I just have it in my head like, all right, this is what I'm gonna do all day. And don't be afraid to throw a buzzbait all day. A buzzbait's a great bait to fish If there's shad and bait in the morning and the fish are pushing, it's a great bait to fish over aquatic vegetation. It's an amazing bait to fish during dragonfly season. Okay, so if you guys are fishing places where there's a lot of dragonflies, damselflies, that kind of stuff, it's an amazing bait to fish right in the middle of the day. You know, noon, 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they will destroy a buzzbait. Just try to match the shade. So if you're seeing a lot of blue dragonflies, go with something that's got some blue in it, whether it's skirt or trailer. If you're seeing a bunch of orange or red dragonflies, go with something that's got some orange or red. If you're seeing a bunch of bait fish, then you can stay with whites and that kind of stuff. All right, bait number 2 for me. Now this is a bait that really I kind of only fish like for the next 3 months. Now, a lot of you guys live in places that you can throw this all year round, but for me, this style bait is like just after spawn, so like a great couple 2-3 week post spawn, and then I don't really revisit it again until end of summer, early fall, and it really only works when they're in that strange transition before they start getting super aggressive. And that for me is a wake bait. Okay, now there's 9 gazillion styles of wake baits, right? And we talk about shad style wakes all the time, like a dye buzzin or OSP burning shad, right? And these are baits that can work year round. So they're small, they're nice and natural. What I'm talking about is more of a larger wake style. So it could be something like a rat, it could be something like a jointed wake, like a SuWitch, or something like an I Loud. So these are the 3 that I kind of live on. We'll experiment with different ones and try different ones just for fun. But this style of wake bait is super, super important for me this time of the year, okay? So, talked about the rat a lot. Just take a SuWitch out, we'll take a I Loud out, and we'll talk about it. Okay, so what I'm looking to do with a wake bait, and this is something that I will throw if my bite window, or if I'm trying to get a really big bite, I would say late morning through early afternoon. Okay, low light conditions, I'm pretty much just throwing the buzzbait. That's kind of where I live. Or if they're not on that, maybe a frog or walking topwater, something like that. Where I like the wake is I like the wake after that kind of morning bite goes away. A lot of those mornings it's just hot, dead still, right? Super dead calm, it just kind of feels dead. A lot of those bigger fish will feed in that zone. Okay, they don't have to compete with so many of the little ones. They can set up on like one really key piece of ambush structure, whether it's a tree, a clump of grass, a boulder, whatever it is, a dock, right? And they can wait for that one thing to go by them, right? And that's what I'm trying to imitate with a wake bait. Now, a wake bait's great because I can fish this really at any speed, but the key speed this time of the year is either slow or walk. Okay, I hardly ever am burning these things in for how I'm trying to fish these. Okay, I'm really looking for specific targets. Jeff, you and I have fished a lot this time of the year. Sometimes you just run bank. You just cover enough ground until you come to targets, right? But you know that, you know, you're fishing bank, nothing. All of a sudden you kind of turn a corner, it's like, oh shit, there's like the perfect rock pile 5 foot off the bank, or there's one tree on this 100-yard stretch. You're like, I know that fish is suspended right there or sitting right there, right? It's a really fun way. You can cover the ground in between targets, but it's really a target-oriented thing, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, you know, Jeff loves this, right? So, I mean, I've been with Jeff when he's caught so many fish on the rat. This is kind of, I treat these the same, okay? So I'm fishing them the same, and it's whatever works for you guys, right? So try different things. So whether it's the rat, the SuWitch, the I Loud, we'll talk about a couple different ones. But basically, I'm looking to just fish this very, very slow and just have that little clack of the body. Right? That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to have something super burned by. I'm just trying to create a little bit of a silhouette up there, and then maybe every once in a while I'll give it just a couple twitches so it kind of walks left and right, and then go back to that slow, methodical movement. So it's somewhere in between like a crankbait and a walking topwater bait for me. Okay, and that's really key. It's easy, right? Don't overwork it. Like cast and wind really 90% of the time. Every once in a while, just mix in like maybe just a little walk on there, just when you're right in a critical spot, and then just keep moving it down. And you'll be shocked when you get bit on these things in that time frame, like from that, you know, late morning or mid-morning to early afternoon. Dude, the bites are just nasty. They're super vicious. So it's one of the best bites you're gonna get because it's just a straight 100% kill it feeding instinct. You know, this isn't something that like, oh, look, there's something that's easy to eat. This is something where they're set up specifically looking to feed, and you presented the right bait to them. Now, once the water cools enough, then those fish aren't really gonna sit in the same places. They're gonna be more roaming, right? And there's gonna be more bait in the shallows. There's gonna be large schools of gizzards and threadfin and stuff. And so they're gonna kind of roam around a little bit more, and they're gonna have a little more energy. But this time of the year, the bigger wake is critical. Now, the other one that I really like this time of the year is the I Loud. Okay, and you're just gonna have to play and experiment with wakes and see what fits your body of water best. I wouldn't be worried about the size, right? So, I mean, we can take a 3-piece or even a 4-piece rat and go catch 1-pound smallmouth in the Colorado River, or take a 3-piece. I mean, dude, how many giants have you caught on a rat just fishing stupid urban ponds?
Yeah, too many.
So, you know, the size isn't necessarily, it doesn't really match the size of the water. It's really about what your fish relate to. So you might have to try a couple things and see what fits your style too. Some baits are really gonna speak to you and some baits aren't, right? So the I Loud's another one that kind of fits this category. What's cool about the I Loud is that you can also burn this if you get into a situation where you need to. So as we start to transition into the cooler temps, this is a bait that you can fish very, very slow on the surface, and it has this internal kind of, it's basically just a weight that's sitting on a shifter that's knocking back and forth. You have the prop, so as you go slow, you're getting just this slow, noisy sound. But if you speed it up, it'll crank down a little bit, and it'll actually kind of start hunting on you. So if the fish get more aggression, then you can speed it up and extend, you know, the usefulness of the bait. So any of those would be great options. So that would normally be number 2 for me. All right, typically, if I've thrown the buzzbait, thrown the wake, I've probably thrown a frog or a walking bait at this time, and they're still not biting, then I tend to slow it down and I go to a creature bait. Okay, now this is the style of bait that I really enjoy fishing this time of the year. And I like these 2 baits because I can pitch them up on the bank and drag them in, or I can fish them out basically any depth I want. I can put it on a free rig, I can put it on a Texas rig, and I can fish it, you know, in 10, 15 feet. I can throw it off a ledge in 30, 40 feet. I can pretty much put these baits anywhere and have success with them, okay? So the 2 baits that are pretty much go-tos for me are the Deps Bull Flat and the OSP Dolive Beaver. Okay, so we throw the beaver a lot, pretty much year round, but this time of the year, the 4-inch beaver, and you can go to a 3.5. You guys are smallmouth guys and you're up in, you know, Great Lakes, that kind of stuff. I'd probably stay in the 3.5. Okay, but if you're largemouth fishing, you're down south, you're fishing around aquatic vegetation, the 4-inch is money. On the bull flat, I pretty much live on the 4.8, but the 3.8 would be a good downsizing option if you want something smaller. 3.8 for me is more of like a lighter free rig size. 4.8 is a size that I can do heavier free rig, or I can fish it on its own, just weightless, weighted hook. But the bull flat is a bluegill imitating bait that's got a big, bulky profile to it, but it doesn't have a ton of movement. Okay, so even though that back end kind of is grooved and it looks like it would have this like really cool, like groovy swim to it, it doesn't. It's really tight. It basically just vibrates the way an actual, you know, true bluegill tail kind of would. So as it falls, it kind of spirals down. Or if you're fishing it on like a weighted hook and you let it sink to the bottom, as you pull it, it just kind of has this little kind of kick to it and then back down. So it kind of looks like a fish that maybe is fleeing on the bottom, or a crawdad that's fleeing on the bottom, right? So it's a super versatile bait. It's more about the push of the mud or the sand and the profile, okay? So no brainer for me. I keep the colors super simple. I pretty much just stay in like green pumpkin colors. Okay, so you can mix in bluegills, you can mix in different flakes, but anything in a green pumpkin, scupper nong, pretty simple. Kind of the same thing with the beaver. I usually throw a green pumpkin color, whether it's green pumpkin, whether it's Fred. Unless I'm in the Great Lakes, then I'm throwing ghost shrimp. Okay, I'll mix and match these two, but ghost shrimp on the Great Lakes is probably the greatest goby imitator that I've seen. And if you're fishing kind of darker water, then I'll go with something with red flake. Iwamizu, black, something like that is a great one. This one, I'm either gonna throw on a free rig or I'm gonna pitch it up onto the bank. Okay, just Texas rig. So this is a great one to throw right up on the bank and drag in, just kind of give it a hop and let it kind of flutter down. And if those fish are sitting really, really shallow, feeding on crawdads, this is an amazing bait to come through the water. Okay, so there you go. Typically by then, I figured something out. Okay, something in there is catching fish. But what happens a lot this time of the year is we'll get systems that'll come through, right? So we'll get storms that'll come through, we'll get wind that'll come through, we'll get afternoon thunderstorms. So I'm always looking at fish conditions, and one thing that I'm always looking for is I'm looking for a breeze, okay? So if you're out there and it's hot and it's sticky and it's nasty and you're doing this and all of a sudden a breeze comes through, or even more than a breeze, like a wind comes through and starts making waves and ripples, that kind of stuff, this can be the absolute best time of the year to smoke them on a spinnerbait. Okay, so I can't tell you how many times people forget about the spinnerbait in the summer, because almost everybody's throwing a spinnerbait in the spring, right? Fish move shallow, we kind of suck, we're rusty, the spinnerbait's just easy, comes through cover, you jack them, and then the fish kind of get through spawn, and then we move past the spinnerbait into crankbaits and topwaters and stuff, and then we forget kind of to bring it back. But in the summertime, this bait can be so freaking deadly, but we're fishing it in different ways typically than how we would be doing it in the spring. So a lot of times in the spring and late winter, we're slow rolling it on the bottom. This time of the year, I'm fishing it super fast. So I'm either burning it subsurface or I'm kind of fishing it really quick through the middle of the column. I'm looking to create reaction strikes out of this thing. And one of the things that I love about a spinnerbait is it's got the perfect flash and profile when it's moving really fast, but it also gives you the opportunity to add sound if you want it or no sound if you don't want it. So it's one of those really cool baits. Now, I've got a couple rigging tricks, or one little rigging trick that I'm gonna talk to you guys about. Now, typically spinnerbaits, 5/8 ounce is where I live. So 5/8 ounce is my favorite size. If that's too big for you guys, you're fishing really small water, or you have really shallow water, a lot of aquatic vegetation, then you can stay in a 1/2 ounce. But I wanna go heavier this time of the year because I'm trying to fish them fast, okay? If I wanted to fish it really slow, then I'd go to 3/8 ounce, 1/2 ounce, and I can just kind of creep it along, but that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm really trying to burn these as fast as I can, and I find that 5/8 is like the magical size. Now, 3/4 can work too, so don't be afraid to play with a 3/4, and don't be afraid to throw a 1/2. Like, it doesn't have to be what I'm doing, right? So play with what you want to do. But I really like the SV3 from Megabass. It's probably one of my favorites. Jeff and I throw, dude, I know you're a swim bait guy, but you gotta admit the spinnerbait bite's fun.
It's one of the funnest ways to catch fish.
Yeah, when
especially like this time of year, like you said, when it's fast and you're reeling as fast as you can and they start ripping the rod out of your hands, it's like,
just fucking dirty.
It's just dumb.
Right. I mean, it's cool to catch fish on a spinnerbait anytime, but when you're fishing it slow and you're like coming through a log and down and that's good. I mean, it's cool.
It's sick.
But when you're burning it through waves and they just rip it out of your hands, it's like, oh my God, it's so addicting. So what we're doing is we're looking for the windy areas. Okay, we're not trying to escape the wind, we're looking for the wind. Okay, so if that wind comes up and starts blowing on places, that's where I want to put my spinnerbait. Okay, so I like the SV3 because it's built to sink, which means I can fish it extra fast, right? And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to basically burn this thing in like a skinny dipper, but I'm getting the flash of the blades, so they're seeing the flash and they're seeing this thing going through and they're charged up hopefully in that wind. Now, if I need to create sound as I'm swimming it through, These blades are spinning, 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 right? All I have to do is just pause just for a quick second and then start winding again. So it's spinning, spinning, and then when it pauses, a spinnerbait just kind of falls and clacks, and then when it picks back up again, it's spinning again. And the clacking of those blades is creating just a little bit of sound on that pause. Okay, and sometimes that's just enough to trigger a strike. They might be following it, all of a sudden it pauses and it goes again and it triggers a strike because there's a sound and there's a movement and they don't know what to do and they eat it, okay? So super, super sick way to get them this time of the year. I love burning a spinnerbait. Now, a lot of you guys might be fishing super thick grass right now. And you're like, dude, I would love to throw a 5/8 ounce spinnerbait and burn it. But the grass, there's like this much water between the surface and the grass, right? Or maybe you're fishing ponds, or maybe you're fishing something that is gonna make it difficult to throw a heavy spinnerbait really fast. So I got something for you. And this will work in big lakes as well, and you can use this as a buzzbait alternative. Okay, this is a small little tweak that we do. I'm gonna show you everything you need to do. But basically it involves this guy. Okay, this is from Teckel. It's a Teckel Sprinker tail. Okay, it's a spare tail. A Sprinker tail is a tail that comes on their frog. Okay? Now you can use this Sprinker tail for all kinds of things. I mean, if you follow Teckel, you follow the owner of Teckel, Hideki, he had Sprinker tails to everything. Right? So you can put this on anything. We've put them on kick knockers, we put them on wake baits. We do all kinds of things with the Sprinker tail. But what I'm doing here is, again, I like the SV3 for this, so I'll pull off those long strands, okay? And then all I've done is I've added a swivel over the shank of the hook. I've added a keeper, and I've put a CPS spring, an owner CPS spring, okay? And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna attach the Sprinker tail now to this CPS spring, okay? And what this is gonna do is this is gonna give your spinnerbait lift in a different movement than what anybody else is doing. So this is how it's gonna look, okay? Super, super simple, okay? But when it's in the water, this Sprinker tail is coming through and it's churning and it's lifting your spinnerbait up. So it allows you to fish your spinnerbait slower and higher in the column than you can any other way. So if aquatic vegetation is your challenge, right? If it's fully matted, you gotta pretty much throw a frog or punch. But if you've got a little bit of a gap in there, you can throw this and you can give those fish a look that they will still trigger and still react to on those days when it's windy. You've got the ripples and those fish want to be active. There's just not a lot of water, right? Because you have so much weed growth on there. So, and again, you can mix and match colors, but this is just a killer way to do it. So again, all you really need to do this is you need a swivel. Okay, so I usually use these Rygui Carodan swivels, but you could use any kind of swivel. You got like a cheap Berkeley swivel or whatever, fine. Okay, you need a swivel. You need something to go over it. So I use these, usually a chain cushion from Zappu, but you could use a versatile keeper. You could use any type of basically silicone that goes over the hook, and that'll just keep the swivel on there. Okay, so the chain cushions are good. They come in like, you know, basically a chain of beads. And then you need a spring, CPS spring. Okay, and that'll attach to the other end of the swivel that you can attach your Sprinker tail to. Okay, so give that a try. I think you guys will catch a ton of fish on it. It's a really neat thing, and once you get confidence with it on a spinnerbait, try playing that Sprinker tail on other baits. You might find that you have a lot of success with that. All right, and then finally for my fifth one, if I'm just not getting bit on that and I see that there should be fish that are active, so I'm in these windy areas, they're just not reacting to my spinnerbait, then I just want to slow down but stay in a bait fish pattern, something that's still going to get some aggression out of them. And I'll switch to this guy. And this is the Deps Sakamata Shad. Okay, now I really like the larger sizes, so I play in like the 7-inch, 8-inch size a lot. You guys can downsize to 5-inch, 6-inch, whatever you like. But the Sakamata Shad's a really special bait because it's one of those baits that you can use as a fluke, of course, and twitch it, but it's also one that you can burn and fish like a skinny dipper. So it has a lot of flexibility, this is another bait that you can just make a super long cast with. You can just kind of get it down, give a couple twitches, and then literally just kind of burn it in, twitch, 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 burn it in a little bit. And as it burns, these little, I don't know, kind of flared gills and the softness of the body cause the bait to have these little micro movements to it. It's not big, exaggerated, snaky movements. It's real tight little micro movements that are super, super natural to what a shad or a baitfish would look like if it's swimming away really fast, right? If you're a threadfin shad or you're a gizzard shad and you're trying to get the hell out of there, you're not gonna have these big, wide movements, right? You're gonna get some momentum and then your body's gonna be super tight as you're just going as fast as you can. Same thing here, okay? So typically, I would rig these just with like a offset shank worm hook. Okay, so you can adjust the worm hook based on the size. You go with a 7/0 or a 6/0, depending on which size bait you go. Sometimes, if I need to kind of slow down a little bit and twitch, and I find that I'm having, you know, they're relating to the size of the bait, but they're not really fully choking it, you can also turn it into a line through. Okay, so this is something that we'll do a lot. You can use a feathered treble or just a regular treble. Sometimes I'll just put like a red treble on the bottom down there. Feathered treble just gives me some kind of attractant. Okay, so I just make it a line through, and in that way, if they're short striking it, I've got a treble hook on there. The bait can slide up and down the line. Now you can play with nail weights or twist-in weights to weight this how you need to weight it. If you put enough weight on there, then you can burn it like this as well. Okay, and you can fish it that way. To do the line through, you can use any kind of straw, or you can use something. I had one out. Valley Hill makes this. This is the Trebling line through, or Trebling through pipe, is what they call it. I like the large size for this, just because I'm normally throwing on heavy line. You don't need the large size because there's not a lot of plastic. Okay, but because I'm throwing it on heavy line, I want that bigger, thicker tube in there. And it's super easy. If you guys want to try this and play on your Sakamata shads, I'll show you what to do. So that's how the pipe comes. It's got a little point on the bottom, okay? And it's got these little like fishhook barbs. So on the Sakamata, I like to go right through the front, and on the bottom here, there's two little like markers, okay? And these are generally markers that I would use for my hook to kind of go in to guide. Can you see that, Jeff? So these would usually be my guide, so I'd go in here and then out there and then rig my hook. I'm gonna use the guide the same way with this, okay? So I'm gonna literally just go straight in through the front, and I'm gonna aim for that second guide marker. So there's the second guide, I'm aiming for that. Okay, that's my target. And that's perfect on the Sakamata, okay? And then that tube, I'm just gonna push it all the way in. So all those barbs get into the plastic. That's it. Okay, so now those barbs are gonna hold that tube in, and now I just cut that off with scissors. Okay, so that gets cut off, and then I have a line through tube. So you can see it's a pretty big tube. You can use it for any bait. You can throw it on a swim bait. We do it on mag drafts a lot, on freestyles, spark shads, you know, Keitechs it's great on. So, you know, play with it. See what you think, but it's a cool way to rig flukes and bigger Sakamatas, and it's a really fun way to get them this time of the year. All right, guys, that is a wrap. I know it was a little longer than I expected it to be, but it's always kind of fun to go down the rabbit holes of some little tweaks. So hopefully that was insightful. Maybe we talked about a couple of tools that you're not using now that might get you some extra strikes this time of the year. If there's something that's working for you guys that we didn't mention, drop it down below if you want to share, because collectively I just want everybody to learn, and I want everybody to catch the biggest fish they can at the end of the summer, and at least, you know, make sense of going out in this ridiculous heat, right? So Jeff, thank you for hanging. You've been very quiet.
I hate this time of year.
Very so. Yeah, you're ready to go back to your winter time. Dude, I don't
want to talk about summer.
Yeah, I don't blame you, dude. Closer to soon. Okay, soon. Yeah, we can start making fall videos next month. So we're so close. So, guys, on behalf of myself and Jeff and everybody here at the Hookup Tackle, thank you for, you know, putting up with the nonsense. Thank you for watching these videos. Thank you for your support. If you have any questions, drop them down below and I will get answers for you. And we will see you again soon. Enjoy the beautiful rest of your summer. Peace, my friends.